Hey everybody, welcome back to Two Rivers Tabac Book Club. I'm your host Andrew and I'm joined today by my co-host Jash.
Why, hello there.
Hello. We are back with Wolves of the Calla. It's going to be book 5 in the Dark Tower series. This time we're going to be covering the last part 3, so this is going to be the ending. Just as a disclaimer again, we say this in every video, but there are going to be spoilers in this. We do treat this as if it was a real book club, as if you were, reading a section that you were assigned and you come back and actually discuss it. That's how we treat this podcast. So if you're worried about spoilers or you haven't read Wolves of the Calla yet, we highly recommend you go back and read that before listening to this. And then on top of that, if there's anything that we don't mention within here, we kind of pick out the things that we prefer and think are interesting, which means we don't always get to every single detail within the stuff we read. But if there's something you want us to, talk about or we missed, feel free to just let us know and we can definitely try to fit it into the next video. But yeah, we can get right into it here. So we had a weird situation that we talked about in the last pod, I guess, where
Sound like my father.
we both utilize audiobooks pretty heavily. I use like a library version. He uses Josh uses Audible. So the Audible version like cut off right before the library book ended, so I got a little bit ahead, but we're just going to kind of talk about that portion really quick here. So depending on what version you had, it may have already been in part 2 or it may have been the beginning of part 3, but we're just going to mention it really quick. And that first event is Callahan actually meeting our favorite person, Mr. Randall
Flagg.
Yes, sir.
And you can always tell it's Randall Flagg because every single time the Dark Man, he always has spiked teeth and he always gives off that presence of like just a overwhelming dread, but he always has a smile on his face. Like he's very creepy. Like I always imagine him as like this very wide-eyed kind of Joker-esque character, like smiling with demonic sharp teeth, and then there's always like a dark cloud around him. So he's just gives off a very creepy demonic vibe. Very I'd say like classic-esque, kind of like he's the bad guy. But he's also very intelligent. So I don't think they straight up went and said it was Randall Flagg or it was Flagg. Maybe they did. I can't remember. But yeah, but when Callahan came in, saw him, what did you think? Did you expect him to ever meet Randall Flagg in this backstory, or did you feel like he had to show up at some point for it to really and be involved with the quartet?
Yeah, no, I didn't think he was going to meet Flagg himself, but yeah, going back to what you said, he does remind me of the Joker as well. Like, I really enjoy his character, just because, I don't know, I mean, the Joker's insane too, but it's just a kind of he's a cool character, so it's fun anytime he like shows up. But yeah, I didn't think Callahan was going to meet him, but it makes sense in like the continuity of the story for him to like get pulled into Midworld and have to talk to Flagg and then ends up in the Calibran Sturgis. But yeah, I thought he was just gonna kind of fall through a door or whatever, kind of like, I mean, I guess Eddie and Susanna got pulled into the world by Roland, so I guess there kind of has to be someone who pulls them in. But yeah, I thought it was cool.
The what's interesting is reading the other books with Randall Flagg and seeing how certain similarities between scenes with him and stuff kind of play out. And that's as far as I'll go with that, because I don't want to spoil other books, obviously, that we haven't read. Maybe eventually, if you read those, when you read those books, we can do a video on like scene comparisons between books with the same characters. But
yeah,
I won't even name the book just in case of spoilers, if anyone would care. So, but so as it goes, Callahan's surrounded by a lot of vampires and gets attacked, and he decides to jump out the window. And because him and Jake has the touch, and so when Callahan's talking, he's just like, "You died, right?" He's like, "Yeah." It's getting really creepy that that Jake can like read his mind, but
yeah,
and all that stuff. But like, what do you think about about that transition of Callahan. Like he jumps out the window to get away, and he somehow just teleports into like this barn once he eventually hits the ground. So it's like in one universe we just have his splattered corpse on the pavement, and then in the next he has like a whole new body in this barn. But actually we don't know if he splatted. We just know from his point of view that he just kind of like it just happened. So what do you think about that? Do you think that he left a dead body behind? He says he died, but there was no evidence of an actual body
Yeah, I
with his story.
wonder if he actually died because I remember we had that situation where Jake was dead in one universe and then he wasn't dead in the other universe and they had to like rectify that or whatever, you know? So I feel like maybe he didn't die in that world because then they'd have to go on a journey to like match up his psyche or whatever, but I just feel like kind of like Mia, he just doesn't Susanna, I guess, not Mia, but like he doesn't really get a break. Like he fucking has to fight all these vampires in the Salem's Lot book and then like goes on all these adventures that are also kind of shit and then he jumps through a window and he doesn't even die. So
Yeah,
and then he
yeah,
has to fight all the wolves and yeah, so you know, he doesn't really
yeah.
catch a break, but it's definitely an interesting concept.
Yeah, he'll never find peace.
Yeah, he's just constantly under duress.
Yeah, and so with his story finally done, uh, do you feel like we needed his story to be this long? Now that we finished it. Oh wait, no wait, we're not done with it yet. Actually,
I mean,
yeah.
we could talk.
So
We
there's a
could talk about
callback.
that now because yeah, I mean, we kind of
Yeah,
wrapped up his story at the end of part two. But I know we talked about it in the previous episode. But I enjoyed listening to his story, and it gives us context to like care about him when he's kind of becoming part of the quartet, and he really does kind of become part of the quartet at the end of this. Um, but yeah, did it need to be that long and did it need to be that detailed? Probably not, in my
yeah,
opinion. But,
I would agree.
I enjoy Stephen King's writing, so it was a good time regardless. But I know we talked about in the past episode, like this book is one of the weaker ones, I think, of the series in general, but it's still enjoyable. But what
Yeah,
did you think? You think it was maybe a little too long, or was it
I
good?
I think it was definitely it's hard because a part of me wants to say yeah, I think it was too long, but then the other part of me says it's necessary for Callahan's story because it's like we're trying to because we had like that's like couple four Dark Tower books before this one to get used to everybody and all their characters. And then so this guy kind of he needs it so that we know who he is through the decisions he made. And so they're trying to like catch him up to everyone so by the next book he feels like a fully complete character. So I think like within a first read, it's just a little bit of a drag. But I feel like if I ever had to reread this series, I would appreciate it a lot more. Or maybe in the next two books, we'll appreciate it even more because now that it got all out of the way here, we already know the character. So the next two books are going to be pretty good that we won't have to be having to call back to it. But uh, as of right now, I do feel like it was a little too long for me to like keep my full interest in it. But it'd be interesting to see what a reread of the whole series eventually what I would think after that. But I did like the callback to the first book because I'm pretty sure Stephen King was after Roland and Jake were like climbing the mountain or whatever, and they like, or I think it was just Roland. He saw the Dark Man like double back, or maybe they both did, and they're like, why do you do that? Well, okay, I guess we're just gonna meet him on the other side or at the top of the mountain or whatever. And it just so happened that in this book, and this is over like 30 years, or 20 years of
Yeah, it
writing.
was at least 20. Because yeah, this is 2002, I think. The
Yeah,
first one
so it
was in
was
the
written.
70s or 80s. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like over 20 years. Like, I feel like in the first book, Stephen King wrote that as kind of like, okay, I'll figure it out later. And then he got to this book and he's like, oh, this perfect. This fits in perfectly. So I don't think he personally planned Callahan to come back. I think it's just one of those things where he's like, this happened in the first book that I set up for something I want to do later down the line, and now I thought of something.
Yeah, no, definitely. It fits in pretty well to like the timeline, and it's impressive that he can remember that far back. I guess he probably reread the books before writing
Yeah,
this one, which there's an epilogue in our audiobooks. I don't know, or not an
yeah,
epilogue, but like
I
an
listened
author's
to
note.
it.
Yeah, and he talked about like him listening to the books in the beginning.
Yeah.
Which at the end of this, I'm gonna make a point about audiobooks, but let's keep going.
Yes, we'll have that in our conclusion. Yeah.
To all those audiobook haters out of there, one of the
Yeah.
most legendary authors is a stand for them. So,
Right. Right. So well, now that we're finally done with Callahan's story,
now that we're done with his 1,000 page journey to get to Midworld.
yeah. Like so why don't you take us into the next part, if you will?
Yeah, no, yeah. The next part is pretty significant, obviously, because part two is also mired with like this side issue of, do we tell Susanna about Mia and the demon baby, and it kind of comes out organically, and they all talk about it. So Susanna finds out about it. She finds out, that it's a demon and that she has another personality now, which sucks, but which
Right.
he really sets it up as if like she's gonna have the baby in this part, but obviously she doesn't. Which now obviously we know with the next book being Susanna's song, it's probably gonna deal a lot with
Oh, it's
that.
actually the song of Susanna.
Oh shit.
Or I could be wrong. I don't remember.
Yeah, song. I'm pretty sure it actually is "Song of Susanna."
But
So yeah, we get to
yeah,
meet the chap in the next
look
book.
at the chap. I can't wait. Will it eat her soul?
Yeah,
Or probably
I'm preparing my brain mentally and my body and just spiritually for it to just be so fucked up. Like just some of the most vile. I think she's gonna get absolutely like. I mean, we can talk about when we do predictions, but I think she's gonna get
Yeah.
absolutely like just defiled. But we'll see how it goes.
We'll see. Well, like the end of this book was even dark as shit too.
It
with
really
some
was. Yeah.
scenes. With what was interesting about Suzanne was pregnant with a demon, right?
Yeah.
And then Roland and Callahan are discussing something with Roland's. Roland doesn't follow the man Jesus, right? But Callahan does. So obviously, Callahan's going to be against abortion, and Roland's like all for it. And so they have their little argument going on, which I don't know. I feel like it perfectly represents how in the United States what both sides think about abortions. There's not really a right or wrong answer. It's just kind of like you have two of these people with opposing points of view, and they go against each other. And I feel like they just mimic how both sides over in the in the U.S. think and debate about abortion. So I don't know if that was just, well, obviously it was thrown in there because it's something that has to come up when you have someone who has a demon in her. you know, and that's as political as this podcast will get. I gave no opinion, so
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're never going to make this like a political thing, but the only reason I kind of wrote a note about it is exactly like what you said is like this book was written in 2002, and I think the conversation is essentially the same even in 2023. So I thought it was cool just to like see that and see what Stephen King's perception of that debate was in 2002, because it's obviously a reflection of how he sees the two sides, and it really hasn't changed that much, honestly.
Yeah.
So.
It's
but
basically
that's
the same thing.
Yeah, that's as deep as I was gonna take that as well.
Yeah. Like, yeah. So however you think about that topic, well, whatever.
And then it's immediately right after that intense scene We get a super badass scene where, I mean, we've talked about Susanna being a badass, but like throwing the plates like from the holster. And don't they have like a competition too? Like the other women
Yeah,
do it
and
too, and they're like throwing the
at some
plates.
point, Roland told Susanna to lose so that one of the women could win, and then
Yes,
just to like hype them up to get them
right.
like
Get
hell,
them like we
heck
can win. We
yeah,
can win. We
we
can
can
beat the
win.
wolves.
Oh, so
Yeah.
oh, so
Yeah. Go ahead.
we get back. The Kamala has 180
Yeah. So
meanings.
I wrote.
Oh
I
yeah,
just wrote a.
yeah,
I just wrote a note. Just Kamala has 180 meanings because I was like, the way Stephen King described it, I just never thought about words that in this way, but it makes sense where like he talks about like, the word run has so many different meanings in the dictionary. Like it could mean so
hmm
many different things. And then he uses that as like an analogy to this word he came up with, Kamala. But of course he takes it in like a Stephen King direction where like the first like three meanings are all like sexual and then all the other meanings are like the lesser meanings of it, which is hilarious. But
yeah.
I thought it was
I
cool. But yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
I thought it was really cool too because I think obviously Stephen King's a writer, and we read, and what is the one of the most important things when it comes to writing or reading? It's fucking words.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of easy for people to forget of just how important like what you say or what you read or like what you think like and how do words work and how did our language even get here, and like and just asking the whys and just kind of like understanding that like words are very important. And so I feel like, to me at least, this scene went to emphasize just like how important and how unique like cultures can be when it comes to language. So
Yeah. No, I thought it
gonna
was
come
cool. Yeah, I mean,
every
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say is like every time I go to the gym, I'm just Kamala in my pants.
Come, Kamala.
Come every time
Next
I'm at the
time I need my
pool.
dog to come to me, be like, come,
Come.
Kamala.
Every time
Fuck
I'm
Kamala.
lonely at night, laying in bed. Come on. Every
Just,
time I read a Stephen King book,
I'm sure that's what Stephen King whispers into his wife's ear. Come, Kamala.
come on. Make a wife a dollar.
If Stephen King was your
uh,
English teacher, this would be his first lesson.
I'd be terrified.
Me
If he
too.
was,
All
if he
right,
was
write your
writing.
essay over the most fucked up thing that's ever happened in your life, and we're gonna share it to the whole class. It'll be lesson
now,
two.
now, take the most fucked up thing that ever happened to you and write a fiction story around it, and there must be at least 2 rape scenes. Okay,
Yeah,
Stephen
there
King.
must be 5 penis references. Just
Oh
incredible.
fuck. It's all right. We make fun of him, but
I no,
I
yeah,
love it.
no, I
I
love
love his
him as an
books.
author. Yeah, I love his books.
Yeah,
Like I make fun like as a, I'm not like for real, but
we like reading. We're
yes,
we're just all right.
just easy to
Next
make fun
question.
of him because it's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, the next note I had here was just about Eddie going back to New York, obviously through the door. And then the whole scene where he saves Tower from Balazar's men and everything. I thought it was a really cool scene because you get to see how savage Eddie is.
Yeah, like all
Like,
the women kill the children too.
yeah, like he's like, I'm gonna kill everyone. It's like, oh my god. And like there's many times where even Callahan even asks him later. Tower asks him a bunch of times, but Callahan even asks him later. He's like, you're not actually gonna kill the children, right? And he's like, doesn't really answer. Because
Cause
it's cool to think about, because like you think about Eddie from book two, like when he got pulled out of New
yeah,
York, and then you think about the Eddie now, like he cares so much about the tower, he cares so much about the quest, like he doesn't fit into New York anymore, right? Like when he encounters Andolini and the Balazar's men and he talks to Tower, like they view him as like a savage, like he looks crazy. They think he's just like a crazy person. So it just
Yeah.
shows like how much he has changed and how like he can't even really go back to New York if he wanted to. Like even if he wanted to go back to New York, he just doesn't fit in there anymore. Like he's like a true
Yeah.
gunslinger, like mid-world guy now.
And as much as he harps on Roland for being a little heartless and stuff for the tower, Eddie, from that conversation with him and Callahan, uh, I 100% believe Eddie would kill the women and the children.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I 100%, and I'm like, that is, I don't know if Roland would even go that far to just kill innocent people. Like just to make a point. No, well, okay, we know he would sacrifice like Jake off the wall, off the cliff, and like stuff like that. But I don't necessarily think Roland would try to threaten somebody by like he might say it like Eddie did, but I don't think Roland would actually go through with it, being like, okay, now I'm gonna go door to door and just murder all these people. Like,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
feel like Eddie would.
I think it's a big difference between like dropping a kid into a chasm, like a split second decision where like you're at the end of your quest, like you're trying to talk to the Dark Man, and like literally all you have to do is open your hand and let the kid die. There's a difference between that and like going, like you said, going door to door and just committing murder.
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't think Roland would do that at this point.
and
But
Tau-
yeah,
yeah, I think Tower is such a fuck. It's not even
it's so.
funny. It's hilarious.
I know he's like. I know Stephen King's kind of painting him to be exactly what you said, a fuck. But it's yeah, it's funny. He's just
Yeah.
such a miser, and very stubborn, and yeah, just a like we've all met guys like that.
Oh yeah. Oh
Stephen King
yeah.
is really good at making relatable characters.
I feel like Tower is like a part of Stephen King. Like Stephen King is a
Yeah,
huge book nerd, right?
right.
So he probably took one of his like many fascinations or one of his many addictions or something, or hobbies that he's taken too far, and he like put it into Tower.
Yeah, no, that's
Because
probably
like
exactly
that
right.
book stuff, like there's book collectors and stuff out there, right? They exist who are probably exactly like this. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know much about Stephen King, but I'm assuming that he's probably a little bit of a freak when it comes to this, as well as Tower. Just just basing it off how on his he's written like a million books. So, I mean, come
Yeah,
on.
yeah, seriously.
So
No, I could
he's obsessed.
definitely see how he could take like that darker part of his personality of like being kind of a miser with books and stuff and being a little bit too obsessed and like make it into a character. That makes a lot of sense. I didn't even think
Yeah.
about that.
No.
But yeah, so I thought that scene was cool and then like after that there was some like discussion about, planning for the wolves and stuff. And I don't know why I wrote this down because I just thought of it in the moment when I was listening to it. Was like comparing this situation to the situation that was in Magus when he was young and he had to deal with the townsfolk in Magus and he had to defend himself against a large band of enemies similar to the wolves, right? Except they're like, the good man's soldiers or the bandits or whatever. And like he makes a lot more, he it's called out in the previous book. I think it was what was it, book 3? Where he makes those mistakes.
It was book
Book
4, I think.
4. Okay, yeah, book 4, and he makes those mistakes that eventually leads to Susan dying, to other bad shit happening. But like in this book, obviously some people die, but like it's not nearly handled as badly. Like he's an
It's
older,
Ka.
yeah, it's Ka, and also he's like way smarter. So I don't know. I just like
Yeah.
thought about like kind of the comparison there, like kind of similar to like Eddie, seeing how Eddie has grown, kind of seeing how Roland has grown. He's a lot smarter than like
Yeah.
the events in Mages. So
And the order that these books came out, so obviously book 4.5 went through the keyhole, was the last one written. So and we read it, so we actually had that like little gap in between 4 and 5, like
yeah,
instead of going from 4 to 5. So but when it was written, obviously went from 4 to this book, Wolves of the Calla. And so when they go back and mention it, so if people were reading this before went through the keyhole, then they would be like, okay, Roland's backstory, blah blah blah, TikTok man, and blah blah blah. So you get Roland's whole backstory, and then you go straight to this book where the situation is has its similarities with Roland's past, but shows you the differences in his decision making and how he gets stuff done. Uh, I feel like it would have been more fresh in our mind as it was probably originally meant to be if we didn't read Went Through the Keyhole. Uh, but we did, so.
Yeah.
But the similarities are still there. Obviously, it's just not as on the mind, I guess. Like, it's not fresh in our head like it would have been if we went through the keyhole, and we would have got to see like one situation and then the next situation.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. Because, yeah, if we didn't read book 4.5, you'd have like a really stark contrast, right? Because we go from young Roland immediately into old Roland, similar situation where he has to defend himself and like with his friends against a ton of enemies. But yeah, no, that's a good point.
I guess
that gap.
Guess that's an interesting question to bring to the table, is that when you complete a series and then you go back and you start adding the points in between books, does it ruin the flow of the narrative? And if so, should you even write it, or should the reader read it after they finish the story as a supplement for more of those characters? And so going from 4 to 4.5 to 5, I'm wondering that if we waited to read Went Through the Keyhole till we finished the series, if these books would have flowed better. Because now that we've finished 5, I'm kind of getting a feeling that we kind of just went over like a hump, and now we're like back on track. So I wonder if it would have just been better to have waited, but I'll make a full conclusion of that after we finish the entire series.
Yeah, we'll have a better perspective on that, like you said, once we finish the series. But I completely agree with you where I feel like we definitely had a kind of a lull, not even like a lull, like it was really entertaining, like reading about this stuff. But yeah, like 4.5, obviously probably not going to be super important for like the events, and like it might relate to the events later in the book, obviously. We'll see. And then like obviously this book, while it is related to the Dark Tower, it's not like a direct we're going to the tower book. So like it's not like the main plot. So we kind of had like a lull there, like with 2 books of not necessarily hitting the main quest really hard. But now, yeah, like you said, at the end of this book, I can like see now with Song of Susanna, like we're gonna hit that event, we're gonna finish that event, and then we're right onto the tower. Like we're back on track, like you said, to hit the main plot pretty quick here. So
Yeah.
but yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of look back on it and see how maybe the 4.5 could have changed things if we didn't read it.
Yeah. How did you like the or what did you think about the whole whatever the robot's name, I forgot his
Oh,
name.
Andy.
Andy, yeah, Andy,
Yeah.
and then Jake's friend's dad uh betraying everyone, like the whole like that whole situation.
Yeah, it's rough for sure. It's just like another situation I feel like where it's just it's Jake is another character that really never catches a break, and then obviously his friend literally dies in the fight later, which we'll get into. But yeah, like, and then afterwards smokes a cigarette.
Right?
But I think it's almost like the just another like traumatizing event for Jake to become who he is now, right? Like he's gone through all these things, and this is like the cherry on top of like ending it. But I thought it was I wasn't like that surprised, I guess, by Andy being like a traitor and then them having another traitor in their midst. I know we talked about in the last part where they mentioned that, where it's like, why do you all just like let Andy just hang out all the time? Like you don't really know like what he is there for. So it wasn't surprising to me that he was a traitor, and then it wasn't surprising there was somebody helping him because like every single time the wolves show up, they know where the kids are, and to me, it's maybe they had. Obviously, we find out they're robots, but like maybe they do have a and maybe they can smell things, but it's like they obviously have some kind of help, and like Andy would be the most obvious help, but
Yeah. And it makes like once you find out that they're both the when you find out that they're both the traitors, the beginning of the book, I wonder if like going back and reading the beginning of the book where it has Andy and then some of the farmers and stuff, how that scene would feel now, knowing that.
yeah. You kind of feel a little bad for Andy because he has that monologue where he's like everybody's an asshole to me all the time. When he's talking to the dad of Jake's friend. Obviously, you don't feel for him that much because he's like bringing these wolves to like take all these children and like steal parts of their souls or like whatever's in their brain or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, you sympathize a little bit with him because they do kind of treat him like shit. But
Yeah, because like let's say like we live together, it's just you and me, and I was just a complete asshole to you 24/7. Like and you hated living with me. I was a terrible roommate, and I was just a big piece of shit, right? And then one day you're like, "Fuck it, I'm moving out." And then I'm like, "I can't pay rent by myself, so I was rooming with you." And you're like, "Well, shouldn't have been an asshole. Fuck you." And then you leave, and it's like I know that's the comparison with that, and then like I'm gonna let the wolves kill all these people
all
and
these
steal their children.
yeah.
Like I know it's different, but it's like I can understand why like Andy would do this because not only like he's a robot, he's not even human, so he's
Yeah.
doesn't like humans. I guess other humans treat him like shit, so why would he care? You know?
Yeah, it almost makes you wonder like if they treated him well, he might have not done that stuff. But I don't know how much he's like programmed to help them already. But I mean, obviously there's no sympathy for like the dad though. That guy sucks. But
Yeah. I don't want to die, Eddie of New York. Damn you.
Damn you, Eddie.
Damn you, Eddie of New York.
The voice actor does a pretty good job of like changing his
Yeah.
voice whenever Stephen King wants it to like be a different voice. It makes him. The voice actor does a really good job of making him seem really very much like an android and like has all these weird voices.
Yeah.
And like scary voices.
Yeah, even though I liked the original voice, the original
Yeah, he was really
guy
good.
better.
Yeah.
It's a shame and that Stephen King mentions it in the audio version,
Yeah.
and in the end we can discuss it later. But I do like the new voices as well, just not as much. Just in my opinion, it's not as distinct, because like Eddie talks and then Jake talks, and it's like going from the original audio in the first couple books where Eddie's like in like this
Yeah,
guy
he has like a
from
strong Brooklyn accent and the guy
Yeah.
like keeps it throughout the series.
Yeah, and then Jake's obvious is still like sounds like it's a little boy. Like I can imagine, and even Suzanne, it's like and Roland, it's like everyone's super distinct. Like nobody sounds similar.
Yes.
But in this version, it does sometimes. So it's like, okay, that's Eddie. And I don't know if I just gotta get used to it again. But it's kind of sucked going from like you had a really good voice guy doing the first 3 books, and then he gets in a motorcycle accident. That kind of sucks. But obviously it sucks, and I feel sorry for him. But then you get to 4.5 and Stephen King reads it. So it's like, okay, we're getting a break from this really good guy, and we gotta bear with Stephen King reading the book. And then you get to finish the main series, and it's like it's a different guy. So you're just like, damn, because we got so used to the other voices.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it's unfortunate because I remember even when we were reading The Gunslinger, like the first book, I was like, this audiobook reader guy is really good. Like he's one of the best we've listened to. Just not like Dark Tower aside, like he was just really good. So, but yeah.
I
But yeah, we had like we've had 3 different voice actors in the last 3 books, so yeah, it gets kind of confusing sometimes. And then he doesn't really differentiate the villagers that much, except for Rosalita, and then the rest of them all kind of sound the same. So
he's better than Stephen King.
Yeah, he is better than Stephen King. Callahan kind of sounds like everyone else too.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Callahan has a little bit more of a raspy voice, but I do see how it's basically similar to the villagers.
It's not as delineated, like you said, as the original reader. But.
So back back to the books. Sorry. But the whole trader scene, this is like a big thing for, I think this book has more stuff going on for Jake than anyone else. Like everyone else has their little things, but Jake, I feel like, had the most character development in this book, because not only does he have to deal with his past trauma, he keeps bringing up that Roland killed him, and I don't think he's completely over it.
Hey, remember when you killed me, dude? Remember when that happened?
Remember when you killed me?
And remember when I was still alive in another universe, and then I had to come back to this hellhole, and then
If I didn't fuck that succubus, it would have seduced you and fucked you to death. But so like then Jake, makes a friend, so then he has to like balance his gunslinger persona versus his inner child, because he's still a boy. So we have that conflict of, if you're a gunslinger, you're an adult. If you're a boy, you're a boy. And see, this book, I feel like, shows the death of Jake's innocence as a child, and he's become a gunslinger like Roland, and the rest of the adults. And I feel like at the end too. Well, I guess let me go through all the things he has to deal with. So he has to deal with his relationship with the other boy as like, okay, now I'm an adult, but I'm also a kid. And then he has like, oh, I finally made a good friend, but his dad's a traitor, and I gotta tell everyone else, and he might die, and my friend might hate me now, or might be sad. He doesn't want to hurt his friend's feelings. So, and then he has to deal with like the battle, the touch, and then he feels like with all the lying, and so that's going on. So he's trying to fix that and tells Roland what he wants to do. So it's like Jake has a lot on his mind in this book. Like there's a lot going on with him. And then, at the end, when the wolves finally come, and you see his friends, like I don't think they said it was like his mom, but it was kind of like his mom, like a mother figure to him. Like she dies.
Yep.
And then he freaks out and goes out there, and then he dies. It explodes, and Jake tried to save him but couldn't get both snitches. Harry Potter reference, by the way. And so then this scene, to me at least, showed that this was the moment that Jake became a gunslinger, a full-on gunslinger. Like he's not a kid anymore. Like,
yeah,
I think that was just represented through the death of his friend.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's like the final shred of innocence. I mean, he really goes on like a roller coaster. Like you said, his traitor daddy treats the friend differently. The friend notices he's treating him differently. The next day, they like kind of make up, and then he gets blown up. His friend gets blown up. So yeah, no, it's definitely like the last bit of like his being a kid, for sure.
And I think it goes even further after, when Roland gives him a cigarette, and it's like, well, you wouldn't give a kid a cigarette, but you'd give an adult would get one. A gunslinger would get one. So, right. And Roland, all book has been Roland cigarettes. Roland has Tabac.
His Tabac. Two rivers Tabac.
2 rivers Tabac. Oh, was that a fourth wall break?
Are we getting meta just like this book?
Wow. It's not only is this podcast getting meta, but the Dark Tower is too. Which
I'm a fictional character. This can't be real. Yeah, we'll get
I'm
into that.
real.
Yeah. But
Well,
what did you think in general of like the final sequence? The fight and
so I really liked it, and it goes to show that even though so Jake saw the future with the touch and saw that the wolves were surrounding Roland, and Roland it hinted at his arthritis because he like couldn't put in the bullets, and the
right.
wolves mowed him down. But maybe in Song of Susanna, there's if they go to Thunderclap or something, there's going to be more wolves, and maybe that scene will actually happen. But for all I know, so it goes to show that even though Jake's strong with the touch, and that may have been fate, and because of their and their karma, they were able to um, change it.
Yeah.
So that I think that's a comparison between the traitor dad, because his whole thing was I'm betraying the Calla for my son, when in fact it wasn't only for his son, it was because of the perks he was also getting too, and Roland points that out. So it's I feel like it's just a comparison between what's right and what's wrong, and how even if you're doing something wrong for something you believe is a good cause, uh, it's only gonna lead into disaster. It's kind of like that saying that
Yeah, the ends
the
don't.
road to hell was paved with good intentions.
Yep. Yep.
So the traitor, like his, you get to see someone who they truly are when they're forced to make decisions, because people can talk all day, but your actions is what speaks louder than words, right? So he keeps saying he's doing all this for his kid, but he takes all the rest of the bribes. And I feel like in this book, Karma played a role into where Roland and all of them stayed true to their morals, won the day. The father didn't. He chose the darker path to accomplish saving his kid, but that only led not only to his kid dying, but his wife dying too.
Yeah.
So everything he did to try to save them through the darker path didn't work out in the end. And Roland and them, everyone who lived, stayed on the righteous moral path. So I feel like it's just Roland's quartet versus the traitors, and how both of them are trying to save people, but seeing how selfish side uh, ultimately lost, because like caring, I guess doing it for others is, more important than for yourself. So self righteousness never prospers.
Yeah. No, I.
Uh,
That's definitely kind of the lesson I took from that as well. Where
and I know I didn't go into like the actual battle, but
no, you're
like
good.
these are the themes that the takeaways that I'm getting from the battle.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you kind of interpreted it that way because I kind of thought about like you said, Jake had that dream where Roland dies and then he doesn't die. Like you said, it might happen later on if they have to go to Thunderclap or something like that, or maybe at the tower he finally dies. But for now, it kind of seems like they were able to kind of change the course of Ka a little bit, which to me is almost like a lot. A lot of this series has been like Ka is the ultimate thing, like, and obviously that's a super old debate, right? Like, destiny, like, are things created for you and you're set on like a predetermined path based on like your environment, or like do you have free will to like change your destiny and like change your environment, right? Like the debate between those two things. I feel like most of the series has been, cause the ultimate thing, cause always gonna happen, like you can't really do anything to change it. At least Roland is very like pious in that, like he doesn't think it you can really change it. But then we have this scene here where Jake has the vision of him dying and he doesn't die. So to me, it's almost like we have one example here, at least, where Stephen King is like, in certain instances, you can have control over what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But
And
like you said, also part of it is the comparison there you said too, with like, some the ends don't justify the means, and yeah, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Where like this guy sucks, so
and
he's trying to show a lesson here as well. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna add on that I don't just think it's the actions that matter, as I think it also matters how you feel in your heart as well. Because like you could do nice things all day, but people, what is your intentions? Like, are you doing a nice thing to get what you want? Do you doing a nice thing to brag about it? Or are you doing like why are you doing it? So I feel like Caw, you not only have to uh you not only have to do good things, but you have to do good things because you know it's the right thing to do, because it's you feel in your heart that you should do it. Uh and I think that shows of off what Roland's been doing this whole time is like he knows as a gunslinger and as a man and as a person that in order to make real change, in order to go along with and keep good cause, to feel the love and passion like in your heart, to do it not because it is the right thing to do, but because you feel or you know in your heart that it's the right thing to do. So I don't know if I'm explaining this too well, but it's more like you have to feel it in your heart rather than in your mind. Does that make sense?
You have to feel things.
You gotta feel
No,
it.
no, I agree. Like, I mean, you can do a lot of good things, but if you're an asshole, then like the
Yeah,
intention isn't there, or like you're doing it for selfish reasons, then it doesn't really matter,
like
right?
like uh, like a good example on my part is like, yeah, I'm a Christian and I hate those Christians who are just like, and I've met them before. Don't get me wrong. We're just like, well, what'd you do over the summer? Oh, I went to Africa and built a well for these kids. You know, they're all like bragging and all this bullshit. And I'm like, dude, I guess good for them to have all that stuff now, but you self righteous prick, shut the fuck up. You're doing it for clout, and that pisses me off. I'm like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's a big
So
difference between doing it just to do it and doing it to make yourself look good, for sure.
yeah, and I think that's another. That's just another thing that this whole between Roland and the traders and stuff. That's just another thing I personally got out of it. So
Yeah, no, can definitely
I
see
feel
that.
like yeah, but when okay, so when Jake's friend died, like the way Stephen King described it, like because you know I like when stuff happens to kids, like I always get like feel a little more emotional than if it were like with an adult. So like when that scene happened for me, I was just like, oh fuck. It's like,
Yeah.
I was like, and then the way Stephen King was describing it, and I guarantee like he probably teared up even just thinking about it, but he knew it had to happen, and even I was just like, oh shit. It was like I'm at work.
Yeah,
Can't
no.
tear up
It
here.
was definitely at least for me, it wasn't a surprise he died, but it was like shocking still, because like I mean, it felt like he was probably gonna die, but
Yeah. I knew
uh,
that your emotionless husk of a heart wouldn't care.
no, when kids die, it's fucked. I mean, whenever Oi is about to die, dude, I know he's gonna die, and it's gonna be the worst day ever.
I'm gonna I'm gonna quote that every time they're like, "What's Andrew's like what did Andrew ever say that really stuck out to you ever?" I'll be like, "He told me one time, when kids die, that's fucked."
I just,
Like,
I mean,
uh,
obviously it's sad, but
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, yeah. As oh, that made me laugh when you said that. I was like, really?
uh,
But
they should have put
oh
kids in.
shit.
GTA. I'm just kidding.
Oh God.
No, it's
Well,
really horrible.
uh,
But I mean,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
of course, Stephen King is also going to take it to the like nth degree of like making it this absolutely disgusting death too. It's like,
yeah.
God,
Oh,
Jesus.
when is there anything left about the fight that you thought was interesting,
No,
or
I think we
do
covered
we?
kind of all of it. I was surprised more people didn't die, honestly, but it also kind of illustrates like, I mean, again, we had that gap with 4.5, but the comparison between book 4 and book 5 were like Roland doesn't know what the hell he's doing in Magus, and then in
Yeah.
book 5, like he's really planned. He's like an actual general. So like,
Let's see.
yeah, it goes really well, honestly. Well, I mean, obviously Jake's friend dying is pretty bad, like a kid dying is pretty bad, but I mean, in all intensive purposes, it went pretty well.
Yeah. That's why I said like about all that cost stuff is
Yeah.
because even like at the meeting before the fight, a lot of the people who were against fighting the wolves came back and were like, no, I agree with you. Let's fight them. So like they changed their hearts changed, you know. So everyone who because only it seems like there's only two people who died. It was the boy and then
Yeah,
his
the
mom, right?
wife, and then
So
the Eisenhardt's wife died too, I think. Oh, and Eisenhardt died, didn't he?
I don't know. Can't
Okay. I
remember.
think those two died too, but I think that was it.
Okay. Because I was thinking, I was like, really, the only people who died were the boy and the wife who the guy who's the father. Geez, I'm trying to word this.
Yeah, I can't
The
remember
like
the
the father
names,
did
but yeah.
did bad stuff to save them, which with Ka ended up killing him because he did a bad thing.
Yeah.
Uh, Not only did a bad thing, but in his heart, he thought he was doing good, or at least he told himself he was, but in his heart, he wasn't. So, so that's why I was like, that's why they died. But I forgot the other people died. Uh, well, I guess.
He probably just had them die, so like there's other people who died, not just those
Yeah.
people. But yeah. It was I
What'd
mean, it
you?
went pretty well. So
Yeah. What did you think of the revelation that they were robots? Like, because I can't remember. Did we predict that? Because I predicted vampires. I feel like and
yes, I
or
did.
clones.
I did predict they would be robots, but I could have seen it going either way. And technically, they have the vampire overlords or whatever. I guess we didn't talk about that. They talked about there's like vampire overlords and thunderclap.
Yeah.
There's like 3 fucking layers of enemies here, right? Like there's
Yeah.
so much. It's like a lot of lore. It's like vampire overlord, and then they have the dudes who steal the twins' brain juice to destroy the rays, and then they have these wolves. So that's like
Yeah.
their army, I guess. So, it's
There's a lot. Yeah. There's just
a lot.
a lot to go through.
Yeah, but
You
so
read it.
there's vampires, but yeah, these guys are robots. I figured they'd be robots just because Andy was a robot. I'm like, Andy has to be helping them. At least that would be the obvious thing. And then yeah,
Yeah.
when it found out they're robots, I guess it makes sense. Plus, like especially the horses and stuff.
What What do you think of all the pop culture references, and how do you think it relays to how? Wait, how do you think it will relate to the next two books? And as a refresher, they mentioned the weapons the wolves had were snitches like Harry Potter.
Lightsabers.
Yeah, lightsabers, who Eddie even says is taken straight from Star Wars, and how the wolves were dressed similar to Doctor Doom in
Yeah,
Marvel Comics.
yeah.
So, if there was any other references, I don't remember. But so, how do you feel like this whole narrative of pop culture references relates to the book and what it's trying to tell you, or like the following books?
I think we've talked about this a lot already, of course, in previous episodes, but I think it's going to go down the path that you predicted a while ago with like the ending of it being really meta, especially with these references and then them finding the book Salem's Lot by Stephen King. It's like Okay.
It's pretty obvious from
It's
there.
pretty obvious now that it's going down that path. I don't know how long it'll sustain, but it definitely seems like we're going further and further down that path. So I think that just kind of relates to like how meta we're gonna get, and it explains probably why the ending is controversial. But we'll obviously find out. I think it's cool though because this entire series is just a blend of so many different themes and so many different other stories that you could like see that he pulled ideas from. So I think it's only fitting to have even more of that blended into here where like you have Harry Potter stuff, you have Marvel stuff, you have Star Wars stuff. So I think it's really fitting for like what the series is in general, and Stephen King does a really good job of blending all these different themes, but definitely going down more of like a meta path. What did you
Yeah.
think about it?
I was like, so since I already assumed it was probably going to go super meta, I didn't know how I was going to feel about it, and knowing that the ending to the Dark Tower series has kind of a mixed review bag,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I honestly just was like, okay, I don't know how to feel about this until I read it, and after finishing this book, getting to the end and figuring out like when Callahan is like, I'm a real person. I did real shit. I am not fictional. And then even
Yeah.
Jake and like is all, and Eddie doesn't care. He just wants Susanna back because she ran off as Mia to have her
Right.
baby,
Yeah.
took the orb and disappeared somewhere or where the fuck it was, a box. So when they're figuring out like Stephen King wrote this book and it's like starting to get real meta, I fell in love with it because it felt so real, and I guess that's the whole theme of this section. So that's why I was like, with all the pop culture references and and now all this of like, am I real or am I not? It's I feel like the theme that's gonna be placed at the end of this series is gonna be, just because it's not physically real doesn't mean it's not like real to you. Like
Yeah.
how reading a book that has a like Lord of the Rings, for instance, the story about being a hobbit who's basically not useless, not completely useless, but super small, kind of weak, uh, and how being like a hobbit in a large world, you can still make a difference and make a huge impact no matter how small or insignificant you might be. And so after reading Lord of the Rings, that can make you feel like that can change you as a person. You could see the morals Tolkien has thrown out there and change emotionally, uh, so I feel like that's the theme that we're getting with these Dark Tower books is, just because it's not like physically real, like happening around you, doesn't mean it didn't leave a lasting impact on you and helped you grow as an individual. So I think that's where the story is going to be leading, and I love that because it's all about personal growth and the love for stuff. Lord of the Rings still makes me tear up. Revenge of the Sith, god damn, I love that movie. So it's like, those were my thoughts. I think I probably will really enjoy the ending to this series, and that's my reason why.
Yeah. I think this, like, if you did this kind of a thing, like putting these Harry Potter references, Star Wars references, like you said, pop culture references into another series, I don't think it would work. And
Yeah,
going this meta route, I don't think it would work. But for this series in particular, I think it works really well because it's already kind of meta even from the beginning. Like you're blending different, genres that are so different, right? Like you have sci-fi, you have western, spaghetti western, you have like modern times when they're in New York, you have, magic and like demons and shit and stuff too. There's so many different genres that are blended together. So like this series, even in the beginning, is very ambitious and experimental, in my opinion. So like when we get deeper into this and we're getting closer to the Dark Tower, getting towards the point where we're gonna go to the Dark Tower, conceivably, and it gets more meta. I think it fits the series well because it's already blending a lot of different things. And yeah, I mean, if the final lesson is kind of, and it's seeming like it's going to lean into exactly what you're saying right now, like that's probably what the ending is going to be, at least what it seems like right now. Um, I don't have a problem with it either. I think it fits well for this series. Now, I think if you're looking for a more traditional kind of experience, I guess, like I don't know, like fantasy experience, like you said, like with Lord of the Rings, with like maybe The Witcher, or like those kinds of series where you're looking for like more of like a traditional fantasy experience, you maybe wouldn't like this ending if that ends up being the ending, like the super meta
Yeah.
ending. I can see why you maybe wouldn't like it because maybe you were looking for something more traditional like that. But I felt like from the beginning of this series, it wasn't meant to be traditional. Like it's already very ambitious and experimental. So like to
Yeah.
me, I think if we go down that route, it fits it for that reason. But
I
yeah.
I would agree. I would agree with you on that because I so the I started thinking about this a little bit. Is like why is the ending controversial? And I think because most people who read Stephen King mostly writes realism
Yeah, definitely.
stories. So if you're a huge fan of Stephen King, odds are you probably like him for the realism, and you're probably I would say some or most or half at least aren't super big into fantasy or meta stuff, right? Just because Stephen King's writing style has always been more into realism, a little bit of supernatural, a little bit of magic stuff, but for the most part, it feels like it's grounded in a reality, not a fantasy world. So when people who have been, especially like in the 70s, like I was born in 97, so when the first book came out in the 70s, I don't know how popular fantasy was. I mean, wasn't there a time where they said D&D was like devil worshipping shit? So it's like,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it
uh,
was in the 70s.
yeah. So I think for like long time readers, were unsatisfied with this meta approach because they grew up on the realism of Stephen King's writing. So when
Yeah.
Stephen King started going more meta, more fantasy, they probably tuned out and they're just like, yeah, I don't like the latter half of the series because it's not what they got into Stephen King for. But for me, I lean more into fantasy than I do realism, but I still love both. I love fantasy more, but every now and again I like my 1984s. I like my
Yeah, of
Fahrenheit 451s,
course.
I like my Brave New Worlds. I like that shit. So, well, those are dystopias, but realism, right?
It's yeah,
Uh
way more realistic than like Lord of the Rings.
yeah.
There's not
Yeah,
fucking hairy hobbits
there's
walking around.
there's
Fucking
not the Balrogs of
yeah.
Morgoth, you know.
Yeah.
The So it's like we need to read the Silmarillion, by the way, at some
Yeah,
point.
we will.
But anyway, but like, so that's why I think the ending is controversial. I think we will like it, uh, especially me, because I love fantasy. So that's why I
Yeah,
went through the keyhole. Mm, perfect.
that was
Love that book.
awesome. That was an awesome book.
So yeah, so I feel like the people who don't enjoy the ending, uh, are the people who you know are more into the horror realism rather than the fantasy meta aspect.
Yeah,
And
no, that
meta
definitely. Yeah.
going meta, what's your opinion on going uh the meta route? Because breaking the fourth wall is very touchy. It either works or it doesn't. There's never really something in between. It works for Deadpool, but if you were watching like The Mandalorian, or I don't watch much TV. What other TV shows are there?
Like
But say
Last
you
of
were watching,
Us or yeah.
yeah, say you're watching The Last of Us in like episode 4.
What do you
Ellie
guys think
just
about these
starts.
zombies,
What,
dude?
yeah, what do you think? Yeah, it just starts coming on nowhere. Or like, oh, I think I didn't watch She-Hulk, but I heard She-Hulk went super meta
Uh,
at the end, and she went like in the writers' room and started talking about
oh
how shit her
god.
show was. So it's like that is very cringe. So it's like you get shit like that where it's like that's bad meta, but then you get Deadpool where it's good meta. So
Yeah.
this at the end of this book we start to dab into the beginning of the meta. So my question for you is uh do you think Stephen King can pull it off?
Yeah.
Going off the reviews and everything.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's tough to put it in. It's tough to open that open that bag of worms or whatever, that can of worms, because it's like many times it doesn't work, like we just named, but like it can work, like you said, with like Deadpool or something like that. But I feel like again, like with this series, I think it can work because of how experimental the series already is, even from the get go. And like to me, I think it can go down that route because we've established that this is like an experimental. It's very unique, right? It's not a traditional fantasy experience like I was saying earlier, and it's also like you said, not a traditional realism Stephen King experience where it's like very realistic for the most part, like 80 realism, 20 fantasy. It's not like that either, right? It's kind of in its own thing. And I know when we talked about this series, when we were talking about reading it, even with our other friends previously, and we try to describe the series, and it's really hard to like describe it, you know. And even one of my friends, just the other day, I was telling him, we were reading The Dark Tower, and he was asking me about it. He's like, "Oh, what's it about?" and stuff. And I'm like, I don't even know what it's fucking about. Like, it's got so much going on, and it's awesome, right? Because it's
Yeah.
fresh, like it's unique, so it's really cool. But I think it can pull off the like meta thing, like you're talking about, because it's so experimental, right?
Yeah.
If it wasn't like that, if it was like a traditional fantasy or like a traditional Stephen King, like you said, like more realistic, and then he randomly just tacks this on here. If it was just like a traditional Lord of the Rings experience or the realistic experience, and he just tacks this on here, it would feel cheap. Like it would feel
Yeah.
like not good. Like it would be like this is shit. But like from the beginning, it's been kind of.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes I've in other episodes I've made fun of this shit by calling it, like bong hit, like fucking philosophy, but
But it is.
but I make fun of it because I make fun of it in that term because there's a lot of series that do it and it sucks. But I think for this series, it works because
Yes.
it's of the nature of this series. But like it very rarely can you pull this card, I think. And for it to work. But I think it
What
works for this. I think I'm gonna if it ends up being a meta ending, I think I'll be fine with it, you know?
yeah.
I think maybe in the beginning, like if you asked me this, and I think I even talked about this, if you asked me this like book 1 or 2, I probably been like, no, fuck that kind of ending. But now that we're,
Yeah.
5 books deep here, I can see this works for it.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, maybe not so much because I wasn't like so immersed in the universe. But like now, it makes sense.
How how did you describe this book to your friend?
Oh my
Like
god,
what'd you say?
I would try
You
to.
could make a
No, yeah, no, I tried to make it really like concise and like really simple, and I was like, I don't know, man. It's part spaghetti western, it's part sci-fi, it's got magic, like it's part fantasy, and then I was like, it's also Stephen King, so it's got a lot of like horror, a lot of like some gore scenes and like some sexual shit, which is just part of like Stephen King's mo. But like I mean, I think the predominant theme is, the desert western type theme because he's obviously like a gunslinger. But that's the best way I could describe it to him. But I
yeah.
was like,
Well,
I was struggling
if
to describe it.
if anyone out there has the same problem, this is what you tell them. first you ask them if they've ever read a Stephen King book
Yeah, that's
and,
step
and
one for
and
sure.
it's step one. And okay, if they say yes, you ask, "Did you like it?"
Yeah, okay, yeah, true. Well,
and
like,
and then if they say yes, you ask them, "What was your favorite part?" And if it is anything that's due sexually, then you know this is the book series
yeah.
for them. Okay, all
This
right,
will be
all
for you,
right.
exactly. No, it's funny you say that because like we have another friend. I have another friend that she actually reads a lot. Like she reads pretty frequently. And I was talking about like how we're reading The Dark Tower, and she was like, "Oh, I don't like Stephen King." I'm like,
Oh
honestly,
yeah,
that's fair. Like,
I can see why. Yeah, I can see why. I mean, I love it. I love his
I
books,
enjoy
but
it as well, but I can,
I can definitely see why she. You
yeah,
probably wouldn't like it. My
I
sister doesn't like it,
exactly, yeah. Like I can
so
understand. I'm not gonna flame somebody for not
yeah.
liking it. I can understand.
So
You
so,
know,
but in all seriousness, like, okay, so if someone asked you, "What's the Dark Tower about?" or like explain it to me in like a few sentences,
oh
this is what
god,
I would say. I would say it is a horror fantasy western about the gunslinger Roland from Gilead, who is equivalent to a crusader, and his mission is to get to the Dark Tower and save it somehow, because the Dark Tower connects all worlds and all realities, and for some reason it is breaking and it is destroying all worlds. So Roland has to get to the tower and fix it, and that's it.
yeah, I think it's pretty good.
And that's it. He'll do whatever it takes. I wouldn't add on more stuff, but that's how
And
I would
it's a
explain
Stephen
it.
King book, so he really will do anything it takes, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean.
Oh, yeah. I had to fuck the succubus. Would
Yeah.
seduce the 12
Oh,
year
I
old
can't
and
fuck
rape
this
him to
succubus.
death.
I can't do it. I'll just fuck it.
Oh,
Whatever.
I'll just fuck. You got it, Susanna. Do it for Jake.
Do it for Jake. Susanna.
Ah,
Have a demon, baby.
that's. Oh,
Or Babby. Sorry.
one of
Demon
my
Babby.
Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby.
One of my predictions where Callahan would die, he did not. He's now part of the
He's
crew.
absolutely part of the quartet now, yeah. He's like a legit character. So
So, is there anything else on the book you want to say? If not, I can read like ask you like one or two questions from this thing I found
no, yeah,
about
go
book club
ahead. No, I
questions.
think I'm good on the book. I think we covered everything. So lay it on
All
me.
right, let's see. I sorry, fucked up the order I
Oh, you're
was
good.
in.
I have a prediction
Uh,
question if you want me to ask that while you look here.
yeah, let's go ahead and go with your question first.
So now, like we said, we have Callahan part of the quartet now. Do you think Susanna is gonna die in the next book? And like Callahan's kind
N-
of
no way.
no. You don't think she
There's
will die?
no
Okay.
no
You
way.
think she's gonna get fucked up? You think it's gonna be fucked?
I think it's 100%
I'm so
gonna be fucked.
afraid. I'm actually like the other books in this series. I was like, I know there's gonna be some horror in it. It's whatever. This book, I'm like legitimately afraid to read because I like Susanna a lot. I know she's gonna get like absolutely destroyed. So
Yeah,
we'll
I
see.
think yeah. My prediction question, my answer for that is I don't think she will. I think somehow I think the next book is gonna focus, like I said in a previous video, that Susanna's baby in this book is like C plot.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
now I think that C plot was building up through all the other books, and next book it's gonna be A plot or at least B plot. I think it is. I think somehow her having this child is gonna get them to the Dark Tower.
yeah. Of
Somehow
course.
it's gonna involve the Rose somehow, uh, and that's my prediction. I don't know how, but I think it's going. That's how it's gonna go. Uh, okay, so these questions I got for you are very very short. I don't think they'd take you that long.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, No worries.
Who would you ever consider? Wait. Who do you most want to read this book?
Hmm. Who do I most want to read this? Like in my family and stuff, or like,
Would anybody, I guess.
um, I don't know who would. I think I would like the friend I have who doesn't like Stephen King. I think it would. I think I'd like her to read it just because I it would be funny.
Yeah, I bet she loved the pregnancy
Yeah,
stuff
and
about the demon shit.
the book one where the monsters are reaching towards his crotch. I think she'd really
Yeah.
like that.
Or you forgot about the scene where Roland puts his gun up the woman's
Yeah, she would really like
vagina and
that.
said, "I'll blow your demon baby to shit if you don't tell me where he is." It's fucking hilarious.
But like,
Holy shit.
joking aside, yeah, I don't know who I'd have read in my family because I don't know if any. But honestly, I don't know if anyone in my family or friends would like it, really, besides me. Because they're not
Yeah, that's,
don't really have anybody else who's into fantasy as much. So
yeah, that was a stupid question.
no,
I'll
what?
ask you another one.
No, who do you think though? For
Oh, dude, I have no idea.
yeah.
Because if I want them to read this book, they're gonna have to read all the other books, and we literally had to just make a book club with us two because no one else could fucking finish 200-page books.
Nobody reads, and okay, we have to have the audiobook conversation too because I gotta fucking
Yeah.
yeah. But like,
Oh,
go ahead.
yeah.
No, yeah. Ask the next
Okay.
question.
All right. Did the book strike you as original? Yeah, like no shit. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
All right. Now a lot of these questions I was going to ask, we ended up really just
Answering.
talking about
Yeah.
naturally. So, oh, well, no, that's a reread. No, I want to save that question for the next book because that's gonna be a good one.
Okay.
Okay, this last one I'll ask you.
Yeah.
If you could ask the author anything, what would it be?
Um. How he got the inspiration for this? I guess like how did he? Because it, like I said, it blends a lot of different genres. I would never think. I mean, and obviously he's really creative. He writes 4 million. He's wrote like 4 million books, and most of them are bangers. So I mean, just like how he got the inspiration for this series, because like you can see some things where you could draw inspiration from, but like the specific theme of like a Western horror, like, fucking has sci-fi, has some meta, has like magic in it too. I don't know. I don't know how he got inspiration for that. So I'd be interested to hear like what the thought process was, like thinking about how to write this series and like how to write the
Yeah.
first book. That's probably what I'd ask. What would you ask?
I would ask him, so in book one, where you had the Dark Man backtrack and do something,
Mm-hmm.
and then in this book, finally have it revealed. I want to know if he, in the first book, when he was writing that, if he did that on purpose, even not either not knowing exactly what the Dark Man was doing, but only putting that in there so that it would give him more inspiration or creative options later on down the series to be able to make a callback to the first book, or if he had always had it planned that someone was going to join the quartet, and if so, did he think at that when he first wrote it if it was going to go this meta route and he was going to bring people from his other books, or if it was going to be a completely original character.
Yeah.
So I don't know, because that was written in the fucking 70s
I know.
compared to like early 2000s. So
I
over
know.
like 30 years, and it's like, or maybe 20, depending on when it was written in the 70s, I can't remember, but at least 20 years. So it's like that's what I want to know is his thought process on that.
Yeah. No, that would be really interesting to know. I'm sure there's like a YouTube video out there that he talks about a lot of these things, which I probably won't watch until, we finish this series. But
Oh yeah, I'm not looking up jack shit about Dark Tower
yeah,
until
no,
we
I'm not
finish.
looking up anything. But yeah,
There's
I'd love to know that stuff for sure.
you I guess you can get to the audio book
Oh yeah, no, I'll just keep it pretty
like
short
that.
here. But like at the end of our audiobook, Stephen King talks about how he's like, oh, I listened to the previous books before I wrote each book on audiobook, and the reason I do that is because you have to pay attention to each word when you're listening to it. Because when you're reading it, you can just like kind of skip over stuff if you want, or like you get tired or whatever. You don't read every single word. Your brain just kind of skips certain words. But when you're listening, you have to like legit listen to all of it, which I feel like we constantly get flamed because like other people are like, "Oh,
Oh, I do.
you don't even actually like comprehend it." And I'm like, "No, you actually comprehend it more because if you don't listen, you're not going to know what the hell's going on."
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
like pay attention more if anything.
And
Yeah,
you're
go.
able to think about it more too, because like you could close your eyes, like let's say theoretically you could just close your eyes, listen, and then imagine everything in your head, so it's being told to you, and then you can think about it better and understand it that way,
Yeah.
rather than having to strictly focus on reading, because when you physically read a book, you have to have it in front of you, read, focus on the words while also thinking about it at the same time. And depending on, if you have ADD or not, ADHD. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
No, for sure.
Depending on other
Which, like, I mean,
circumstances,
most people
you,
nowadays maybe don't have ADD, but they have short attention spans. So, you know,
yeah. So it's like, what if you're dozing off or you get tired or, and it's listening is just, it's easier to retain the information from listening. Now, I'm not saying I don't read actual books, because I do. I just, it's easier to audiobook these long, big ass books. Like I am not physically reading Wheel of Time.
yeah,
No
no,
goddamn way.
that's
No
crazy.
way in hell am I
Nah,
doing that.
I mean,
I don't have the time for that.
yeah,
Like fuck that.
I mean,
I'm
and
not
we
doing.
don't
I'll audiobook
claim
that.
obviously to be like fucking, we're not like scholars or anything. We're just two normal guys trying to read, trying to, enjoy our hobby, and like we're both busy, and audiobooks just make it so much easier to be able to continue reading. And I think when people like make fun of like people who, listen to audiobooks, it's like, well, I'm reading all these books. Like, how many books have you read? None. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, you only
Dude,
want, you're like, oh, you only want to sit down and read the book? Okay, do it. Oh, you're not going to do it because guess what? We're all really busy and don't have
you
time to do that. So
you can barely even palaver, let alone listen to a book. No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
exactly. No, audiobooks have completely changed the game for me. And like you said,
I'm
I
so
mean,
insecure about audiobooks.
you're right. I've been attacked too many times.
It's
No, but I like I said, there's certain books we've read that I've actually read, like, yeah, the paper, version. But I don't know. I enjoy audiobooks.
yeah, me too. So
Pretty much it for me.
I only got one last thing, and this
Yeah.
is it. So my prediction for the following books, I think we're gonna see lots of teleporting to a lot of Stephen King books. I think it's not going to be like the previous books where it's go in like walk through the stands universe for a little bit, or Callahan stuff for a bit. I think the next two books are going to be teleport crazy, and we're going to be going through a lot of Stephen King's other novels and novellas. And if so, oh yeah, you haven't read a whole lot of Stephen King, so maybe I was gonna ask you what book would you be excited for him to dabble into, for Roland to travel to?
Yeah. No, I've only read it, so I mean, I'd be excited if they had that. Maybe she has the demon baby and it's it.
Pennywise.
Nah, yeah, no, I could definitely see it though, like where we're starting to jump through all the different dimensions because we're already kind of dabbled with that a little bit with them going to New York and coming back and shit. So like now that they like have that capability, definitely see
Yeah.
that.
I'd like to see them go to Pet Cemetery. I won't indulge further on that just because um, you haven't read it or seen any of the movies, so you have no idea what it's about. So I'm definitely not going
Hmm.
to say jack and shit
Yeah, I'm wondering
about
like
it.
how many if he does go that route, like how many books he'll go into and like if he's gonna spoil a bunch of them because he kind of did for Salem's Lot, but we'll kind of see how it goes.
But that was like the second book he
Yeah.
published, so
Nah, I mean it's not,
it's
and
like
also like Salem's Lot. It's like okay, it's a priest fighting a vampire. Obviously, he's gonna beat the vampire. So like, I mean, it's not, it's not like
yeah.
revolutionary that we find out that he fucking wins. But
Yeah. Like I'd still read Salem's Lot, but I'm not butthurt knowing that they defeated the vampire
yeah,
because
it's
I would assume that they would.
yeah,
But with Stephen King, you never know.
yeah. You never
So
know. Sometimes he just ends it where everybody's just fucked. So
it's it's true. It's
yeah,
true. So yep,
yeah.
that's all I had.
I'm hyped for this next book though. I'm really
The
excited.
same. No breaks. We're finishing Dark Tower series,
I
so
know.
no Wheel of Time. Sorry for all five of you that want us to continue Wheel of Time. We'll get to book 10 once we finish book 6 and 7 of Dark Tower.
Yeah, Wheel of Time will always be a slow burn. It's long, so
Yeah, we're 9 books in though.
yeah, I know.
About to start book 10.
I know it's
Like,
crazy.
damn.
I'm excited to
Well,
get to like the final sequence though of this series, and I'm excited to like have the standoff with the chap. So
yep, me too.
the chap.
The chap.
All right. Well, anything
kill him,
else?
sire. This palaver has been quite nice.
I agree. All right. Well, say thank you, Sai. We'll see you next time. Like we said, if there's anything we missed and you want us to talk about, just let us know. But we'll be back with Song of Susanna next week.
Yeah. I'll smell you later, Red.
See ya.